So this guy did not get into art school, and that eventually caused actor Steve Martin to get conned out of $750,000. Let me explain. Now the guy, let's call him Lil Mustache Man. And Lil Mustache Man really wants to go to art school, and he applies twice. But unfortunately for him, the school is like, nah bro, and he doesn't get in, because he's not very good. But 25 years later, he's Chancellor of Germany. Yet he still considers himself a connoisseur of the arts, and he's still allegedly a bit salty about getting rejected from art school all those years ago. And as he directs his military to invade other countries around Europe in World War II, he also has them loot museums and raid art collections and steal all the art pieces. And they become notorious for this. It's estimated his goons took over 600,000 pieces of art during this time. By some estimates, they took nearly 20% of all the art in Europe. And some of it they keep and some of it they destroy, but to this day, a lot of that art has never been recovered. Now, let's fast forward several decades to the 1980s, because I want to talk about this guy, Wolfgang. And Wolfgang, he's in his 30s, he's kind of a hippie, and unlike Lil Mustache Man, he's actually a very talented artist. He's a painter. And one day, Wolfgang's like, fuck all this working, I want to make quick money. And he gets a crazy idea. He's gonna forge some art. He's gonna paint some new paintings in the style of old famous artists who died a long time ago, and he's gonna pass these fake paintings off as originals. Cool plan, bro. And so he does this. He makes these fake paintings and passes them off as old masterpieces. And surprisingly, it works. And he sells them to people, he sells them to art galleries, and pretty quickly he starts to make good money from this, like hundreds of thousands of euros. Then, in 1993, everything changes for him, because he meets this woman, Helene. And he and Helene, they fall in love, and eventually they get married. And not only is Helene okay with her new husband being a con artist, art forger, but she's like, let me help you out! And she becomes his partner in this scam. And together, Wolfgang and Helene and some other acquaintances of theirs, they really start to perfect this whole thing. Like, they make sure the canvases they're painting on are from the right period, that the paint is from the right period. He even builds an oven and cooks his paintings to make them seem cracked and old. And then they approach art dealers and auction houses and they sell them. And when the art dealers are like, hang on a second, where the hell did you get all these priceless, long-lost paintings from? Wolfgang tells them some complicated story about how they had inherited all these works from their art collector grandparents, and that they had originally been looted by Lil Mustache Man's military back in World War II, and that they were just recently recovered. And since Lil Mustache Man really did steal that many collections of art back in the day, these art dealers start to believe that, yeah, it's actually plausible that Wolfgang and Helene's story is true. He inherited a bunch of long-lost art. And so anyway, they start selling all these fake long-lost paintings, allegedly by famous artists, for hundreds of thousands of euros per painting, even millions sometimes. They make 2 million euros off one painting alone, or about 2 million US dollars. And so suddenly they're rich. And now that they're rich, they gotta go and buy a bunch of shit for themselves, because that's what you gotta do. And they buy a big mansion in Germany and a villa in South France. They're traveling around to all kinds of places, chilling on yachts. They apparently dress all high class now, and Wolfgang's driving a pimp-ass Jaguar. And so this scam goes on for years. Wolfgang will make a fake long-lost painting in the style of a well-known dead artist, and they'll claim it's authentic and sell it for a ton of money. And yes, there are actually skeptics. There are authenticators and people in the art world who start to doubt them. No way you have all these old originals. And they really start to push them on the authenticity of these. And of course, Wolfgang's like, nah, these paintings have been in Helene's family for years. We have really old photographs of Helene's grandmother standing next to them. And so to squash these accusations, Wolfgang and Helene will dress Helene up in vintage clothes and take a photograph of her with some of these paintings in the background. But they'll make the photograph look vintage too. And they'll show it to the authenticators like, look, here's a really old picture of Helene's grandma in front of the paintings. Like this, what you're looking at is actually a photograph that they faked. The shit is wild. And so they get not just people to believe them, but like art authenticators to believe them, and experts believe them. They have everyone fooled. Let me needless to say, this plan is working. And at this time, in the early 2000s, it's estimated that Wolfgang and Helene and their accomplices have profited over $100 million from this scam. $100 million from fake paintings. And to make it worse, it seems like no one is going to catch them. Until Wolfgang screws everything up by using the wrong color. Because one day in 2006, he's painting one of his fake-ass paintings, and he runs out of the color white. No big deal, he'll just make some more, because he usually mixes a lot of his own colors. But on this particular day, this one time, I don't know if he's running late or if he's just feeling lazy on this day, but instead of mixing his own white, he goes to the store and buys a tube of white that has titanium in it, or titanium white. And he uses that to finish his painting. Then, after he finishes, he and his crew sell it to a trading company. And they tell him that it's by this famous dead painter, it was painted back in 1914, and that it's all legit. And they sell this fake 1914 painting for 2.8 million euros, or about $3 million US. And that's all fine and good until the buyer notices something off about this work of art. So they demand to see a certificate of authenticity for the work, which obviously a certificate of authenticity doesn't exist because this work is a fake. And so this buyer sends this fake 1914 painting off to an art expert in London. And that expert puts it under a microscope, and bam, that's when he sees it. The paint Wolfgang used in this supposed 1914 painting was titanium white. But titanium white wasn't really available until 1916. And so this buyer gets pissed, because he just got ripped off. And he goes and he files a complaint with a district court in Germany. Then the Berlin State Police gets involved, and they start investigating. And they discover what you already know, that this painting is fake as fuck. Not painted by some master in his workshop, but painted by Wolfgang, probably in his garage. And from here, pretty quickly, word starts to spread around the art world, and boom, there are lawsuits galore, as Wolfgang and Helene start getting sued by a bunch of the people they ripped off. Then, one morning in 2010, when old Wolfie and his wife are about to drive away from their big-ass mansion, pow, a bunch of police cars suddenly surround them, and bam, they get arrested. And I don't have a mugshot, but here's what he looks like in real life. So, then what does all this have to do with the actor Steve Martin? Well, apparently Steve Martin is an avid art collector, and in 2004 he actually bought a painting from a gallery for about $750,000, and I assume he thought this painting was badass. Well, unfortunately, it was a painting that Wolfgang had done, aka a forgery. Obviously, Steve didn't know it was fake, but nonetheless, bro got ripped off. Anyway, allegedly, Wolfgang had faked over 100 paintings over the course of 2 decades, and that's why, at the end of it all, he gets sentenced to 6 years in prison. While Helene gets sentenced to 4 years in prison, and Lil Mustache Man, well, he unalived himself a long time ago. So, good for them?